The horses have been the master teachers for me around developing that sense within myself.
You can have your eyes brighten and widen, and it's just easier to make eye contact. There can be an inner quieting for yourself. Yeah.
So I just want to acknowledge that none of us escape being conditioned. When we're born into this world, that's part of this world.
I can see that probably all of those ticked off at different times. And I was involved with doing my patterns of focusing on the others and not being aligned with myself.
Recall a memory of something that you had a clear yes for, something that brought you joy, love, you felt so aligned with it, is your calling. Welcome back to the Healing You Method podcast. I'm Gloria Lybecker, and I'm joined as always by my very dear friend and co-host, Gail Donohue.
Hello, everyone. It's wonderful to be here with you today. And we are going to be discussing how we listen to our body's yes and our body's no.
Yes, we'll explore how to build fluency in the body's subtle language and how often we override our intuition just to keep the peace.
Yeah. So let's begin with interoception. And that's the ability to sense the internal signals of our body. So when we are able to tune into these internal signals, they can give us subtle cues that guide us towards our yeses, towards expansion, or our nos, towards contraction. So we can go towards warmth and ease, or towards tightness and discomfort.
Yeah, true yes often feels very light to me for sure. And there's a forward momentum or motion, the relaxation. So the parasympathetic actually is being activated. Whereas the no, it's definitely a contraction. For me, it's really in my gut. And there's a heaviness and a withdrawal, a pullback. And the more that we are able to really notice and pay attention and have awareness of these signals, the more fluent we become in the body's language. And in my experience, the more we access our intuition and we develop a trust relationship with that. The horses have been the master teachers for me around developing that sense within myself, being able to notice and name what's happening within my body or even in my thought cloud. When I'm with the horses, there's a definite difference that I get in the feel with them. I remember one time being out with the herd, and there was an opportunity to have them all together. And I had an intention. I was going through a process at the time, and each of them were representing something to me. And I was really nervous about doing this. There were others that were watching. That was probably key for me. I was being watched. And yet, as I stepped out there, and this one particular horse turned and looked at me, and that's the one that, for whatever reason, I would just have this fear that would come spiking up right through my center. And in the moment, then what I did is I named it because when I had that fear spiking, I could recognize that it was as if in my younger years that fear would spike and then a crash would happen.
Mm.
And so rather than having that crash happen, which would be harm, what I did is I just very quietly, I named it, but I named it to the horse. And as soon as I named that, there was a softening. There was like a letting go, if you will. And I could even just feel like my spine felt straighter and my shoulders dropped and my head was erect. And then there was a release within the horse. And it was really powerful as I continued through that process, just really tuning into my body's wisdom, naming what was true for myself and naming my intention as I moved forward, the whole herd would begin to, it's kind of like a choreographed dance with me. Whereas when I've not done that, I've had my horses just turn around and show me their butt and not have anything to do with me until I get honest within myself. So they're definitely a mirror that helps me to develop that.
Yeah.
But those kinds of experiences can happen not just with horses. It's- What about you, girl? What kind of experiences have
Well,
you had with that?
yeah, it's interesting. I'm really getting a big message for myself right now, is that, I've learned to tune in to my body's signals and notice when things are flowing or when there's a disconnect. But a big clue that I'm getting right now over this last month is that I am still have been in this pattern, overriding pattern, that I then override my body signals and I don't honor them.
Mm.
And then what ends up happening is I usually pay for it later. And that's been in, not recognizing the stress and going into some exhaustion and then more disconnection to the point where, I have to actually stop. So,
Well, that brings up a key here because you said you override it. So
mhm.
I'm sure quite a few of our listeners do this, maybe not even consciously. But what are some of the reasons why we override our intuition?
Yeah, I was going to invite our listeners to as I talk about this a little bit, is to think of a recent decision that they may have had and made and reflect back, and how did your body respond?
Mm,
Were you able to feel some subtle cues that were either a yes or a no, but then perhaps overrode them? Like, for instance, a yes can be, as you've mentioned, Gloria, a softness that you notice, and then like a leaning forward and a softening towards the idea. There can be a breathing that begins to become longer. The exhale becomes longer. There can be warmth in your chest. You can have your eyes brighten and widen. It's just easier to make eye contact. There can be an inner quieting for yourself. And with some no's that we can have, you can notice a tension, like in your body tensing up, and your breath could get shallower and held more. There's more of a rushing. For myself, I notice a, a tightening of a band across my forehead or the back of my neck. That one is like, okay, that's the next level coming up. And then often my throat will constrict, and
mm,
the stiffness is in your back and shoulders. That could be one that's common for people. But brain fog can start to come in too.
mm.
That could
Oh,
be something.
definitely.
So yeah, what
There's,
might you be noticing yourself?
yeah. And then actually pausing in that moment
Mhm.
and recognizing what is it that what are you wanting? Are you wanting to keep the peace? Are you wanting to avoid conflict? That I definitely was always wanting to avoid conflict, or perhaps meet expectations, not of just your own, but maybe of what you perceive others would like you to do. So you want to meet those expectations to be seen favorably by others.
Yeah.
So I do want to acknowledge that none of us escape being conditioned. When we're born into this world, that's part of this world. And yet, until we grow our awareness to recognize our body's patterns that we have been conditioned to dismiss ourselves, because they're very unique. Even between you and I, Gail, there's so many similarities and there's so many uniquenesses.
Mhm.
And as we can begin to access our body's wisdom, we can actually come home to our own heart.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, with focusing on this work, it's just becoming more and more clear how much, you know, we abandon ourselves. And I know for me, I'm certainly getting these lessons loud and clear in these last few months of okay, no, you're still doing it. You're still doing it and really eroding that trust with my inner heart and my inner compass. And I'm realizing I don't think I was, I think I know I wasn't ever really allowed to have that connection, for the reasons of growing up in my childhood in the situation and didn't learn how to connect. So it's, and you mentioned about did you do it to keep the peace or did you do it for expectations? I can see that probably all of those ticked off at different times. And I was involved with doing my patterns of focusing on the others and not being aligned with myself. And it's becoming clear to me now that it's really a lot of it's related to I wasn't really allowed to support myself to exist. And that might sound sort of strange or different, but I'm really getting that message loudly now for myself. It was, especially with this last month of leading up to Christmas with what's been happening with my husband's health and extra appointments and medications and our daughter being pregnant and she's struggling with the early pregnancy, or well, she's past the early stages now, but definitely there's a lot when it's your first baby
Mm.
to be dealing with and looking to me for support, and then Christmas coming. And I'm realizing that, a lot of that Christmas pieces were expectations that I put on myself, thinking that what others need.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of patterns that come into play with each of those storylines.
Yeah. Yeah.
And yet that is life. We
Mhm.
all have these waves of highs and lows and in-betweens. And it's possible when we begin to notice, like what I'm hearing you say, is you're really noticing, especially when it's highlighted at this last season, how you could recognize things so much more readily.
Well, I
And
mean, you say the word highlighted, but I'm just kind of chuckling there because it got to the point where my body took over, and I ended up
that really
getting,
highlighted it, didn't it?
yeah, it
It stood
totally,
out.
it stood out. I got vertigo, I got nausea, I couldn't do anything because I kept on pushing up until I couldn't. So my body made the
Yeah.
decision for me.
Yeah, so there was a
And
high cost, wasn't there?
yeah, there was definitely a high
Definitely a
cost.
high
Yeah.
cost. And really, sometimes that's what we require to get our attention enough to realize, oh, this is pretty serious.
Mhm.
I need to really take a look at what's really going on here and begin to disentangle all of those entanglements of our own circuitry that we didn't even have awareness of. And I don't want to make us wrong. I want to be able to really step in very gently with a lot of compassion because we all experience this in our own way. And you're not wrong for it. You're not bad for it. This is just an acknowledgement of the conditioning that you've experienced through your life from the time you were just small. And by the time you get in your 60s, like us, well, you really have those patterns down. They're deeply embedded.
Yeah, I could get a gold medal for these patterns. Absolutely. If
Absolutely.
if there
And
was a
yet,
competition, I would win it. Yeah.
especially when your competitive pattern comes forward.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, not that I wanted, but it happens.
Yeah,
Yeah.
well, so the good news is that we can rebuild the trust.
Mm.
And when we begin honoring even little tiny small ones like rest, taking the moment to rest when we're tired, saying no when something feels off, or pausing before committing. I know I've been making different choices in my life for the last several years, and I've had some real favorable experiences with that. And then at the same time, after I've taken this action step and I'm having this favorable experience, it's kind of like wham, something comes in and gets me right after that. And so again, there's those highs and those lows that we experience. There are patterns that our body has been conditioned to anticipate. And so, music has come back into my life.
Mm.
And with the music, I've begun starting to practice singing again, and I've been just enjoying myself so much. And then I was going to get this sound equipment, so I'm going to take it to the next level so I can practice and I can actually hear myself like I used to. And then I recorded myself singing a cappella. And oh my goodness, did the cringy voices come up inside of me? And it was like, because when I sang 15 years ago, I sang quite well. I had developed my range and my voice and my breath. And then for 15 years, I didn't sing. So there's my body and my throat and all of this has, atrophied. It's not what it used to be. And yet there was a part of me where I had the expectation that I just pick up where I left off.
Right, right.
And it's
And
not
like
true.
Gloria, that really brings like when you talk about it and you're looking at when you were younger and the timing, it just that's a beautiful illustration of how much we get conditioned to leave ourselves. Because we think about as young children, children have that innocence of knowing what their yes is and knowing what their no is.
Yeah.
And we get that with that conditioning and we move out of it and we
Yeah.
disconnect from ourselves. Yeah, it's really learning how to come back and trust our intuition and leaning into that more and more.
Yeah. So what I have been doing is I have been taking time to draw my circles out, to
Mhm.
spend some time sitting in the shadows of my life and recognizing the patterns and getting really good at noticing, oh, well, when I'm telling myself this, or when I feel this clench or my throat clenches up, what am I telling myself? Do I even notice? What are the emotions that are running through me? And what's the action that I take in order to make that stop? And, am I shrinking back even more? Am I going to not sing today? And when I can begin to recognize that, then I can have some compassion and understanding. And I can also step into, well, what is it I love? Well, yeah, I might not hit that note as accurate as I'd like. And well, that was a little scratchy or whatever. And it's like, I'm still having fun. Am I focusing on what I love? Or am I criticizing myself in the background?
Yeah, yeah. And
And
I think Gloria, what you when we've talked about it other times, I think the action totally is important because that ends up creating what we were going to have more of or less of. And
yeah.
then you've also talked about how the energy that you have with making that action and making that decision, how important that is as well.
Well, and it's actually recognizing there's an opportunity to pause,
Mm.
to sit with your inner sea, with your inner experience, instead of rushing into the next moment in the future, to sit in the now, in the you, where it may be most likely very uncomfortable, and to sit there anyway. There's gems there for you. This is where the disentanglement happens. And it's where you're freed up when you can name the truth. It does set you free. And
Yeah, there's a
from
reason for
there,
these expressions, right? They've stood the
absolutely,
test of time because they're so true.
exactly.
Yeah.
And truth is something that's not spoken about a lot. But
Mm.
when we can be honest with ourselves and step into our own unique truth and recognize through our intuition, through spirit's guidance, if you will, what is my next action step to take? And then take it. Even though it may feel cringy, do it anyway. Just do it. And then notice what that's like as you step in. So, just take a moment right now and just notice as you just come into your body. Recall a memory of something that you had a clear yes for, something that brought you joy, love, you felt so aligned with it as your calling. And notice how your body responds as you just saturate yourself. Just there's a word was going to use, but it's just like just embody that. Um, Soak it up.
Yeah.
How does it respond? And then no, just take a moment to step into another memory where you had a clear no. something that just really could feel like it drained you. It was not in alignment. What happens in your body when you think about taking that action and it's something that your body's saying no? Gail gave us quite a list of the different ways our body might respond, but notice for you what it's like. Because this practice, pausing and noticing, paying attention to what are you focusing on, really, that is really going to allow you to really get to know yourself in a whole new way. And it's really by going through and noticing sensations that become the emotions and become the thoughts.
Yeah,
But notice
yeah,
when your body does say yes.
yeah. So, what we've been exploring is all about interoception,
Yeah.
like how to recognize the body's yes and the body's no. And that could be looking at our internal signals, like our heartbeat, our breath, our hunger, our thirst, butterflies in our stomach, tightness in your chest or your gut or your throat. Body temperature is another one too. Recognizing the signals and what is more aligned with a yes and what is more aligned with a no.
Yeah. So our invitation this week is simple. Ask your body one yes or no question every single day and pause long enough to notice the sensations that arise and honor that. So before we close, we want to give you a little teaser for next week because you're going to absolutely love this conversation.
We will be joined by Doug Geezer, an award-winning, top-selling realtor and a deeply grounded teacher in inner transformation.
Yes, Doug brings the rare blend of real world success and real soul work, helping people break free from limiting patterns, limiting beliefs, and to live with more peace, presence, and purpose.
Please join us next time, and I'm sure you'll walk away feeling expanded and deeply supported.